gentleman that I'm going to introduce right now, Erich Pratt, is the Executive Vice President of GOA. And let me tell you what they are. They're an excellent organization, and they spend your money well. They don't waste it on suits and trips and vacations and such truck as that. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce Erich Pratt.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, well, thank you. You all hear me okay? Crackling gone? Good deal. Well, I want to thank John Harris. I want to thank the TFA for having me here today. John has been a true ally of Gun Owners of America. We've consulted with him on Tennessee legislation. After all, he is the guru for what's happening here in the state. He's joined with us on federal lawsuits, amicus briefs, and things like that. So we're very grateful for TFA for all their support. And I'm very thankful to all of you for being here and supporting them. This is a good organization, and they definitely need your continued support. You know, there's one thing that's become clear to me, and it's something I see at the federal level, something I see at the state level here in Tennessee. It's something that we share in common. It's the proliferation of rhinos. You know what a rhino is? A Republican in name only, right? It's a liberal who's really pretending to be a Republican. Basically, that's a rhino. Now, or let me frame it for you this way. We have any football fans in here? Appreciate the fact you're giving up, College Day, Saturday. But so let me give it to you with a football analogy. What do you call a person missing 75% of their spine? That would be a quarterback, right? Now, what do you call someone missing 100% of their spine? That's a rhino. There you go. That's right. See, that helps you understand what a rhino is. They lack the spinal fortitude to do the right thing. They lick their finger, they stick it in the air to see which way the wind is blowing. Let me tell you, rhinos are what's killing the Second Amendment. Yeah, Nancy Pelosi is bad, Chuck Schumer is bad, Joe Biden is bad, but it's the rhinos that are helping them. That's what's killing the Second Amendment. So what does a rhino look like in practice when it comes to gun legislation? Well, let me give you an example of something that we just had to deal with in Washington, D.C. Some of you are probably familiar with this. In June, 15 Senate Republicans crossed the aisle and helped Democrats pass Joe Biden's gun control. Talking about leader Mitch McConnell, talking about Joe Cornyn, Lindsey Graham. Those are some of the more well-known, but 12 other Republicans along with them. Their assumption was that Republicans just had to support this legislation. Why? Well, there had been 2 recent horrible shootings, and they feared that there would be political retaliation if they didn't support this legislation. Never mind the fact that what they were doing was unconstitutional. See, this was all about politics for them. That's ultimately what drives the rhino. But even then, they never asked themselves, Biden went on primetime television. He called for gun control. This was right after the Uvalde tragedy. This is one of his many horrid speeches that he's given recently. And yet, in calling for gun control on primetime national TV, it didn't seem to help his poll numbers at all. They still continued falling during that time. So why would supporting gun control help Republicans? I mean, they never asked themselves that question. Well, guess what? 15 Senate Republicans, 14 House Republicans crossed the aisle. They helped Democrats pass this legislation, and now you know what we hear most recently? There's a generic congressional ballot. It's run by a polling group, 538. Republicans have been leading for over half a year in this poll, and now, guess what? It completely flopped It switched in June, right at the end of June, which guess what happened right at the end of June? That's when these 29 Republicans crossed the aisle and stabbed us in the back. See, selling your soul to win the devil's favor is never going to work. It's always doomed to fail. So, right? So real quickly, what did pass in June? In case you hadn't heard, I mean, you probably need to know about this. First of all, the new law spends millions of your taxpayer dollars, like we needed to spend more, millions of your taxpayers' dollars to encourage states like Tennessee to pass what's known as red flag gun confiscation orders. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. These laws throw due process out the window, can result in you losing your guns merely based on an anonymous accusation by somebody. That you get accused of being dangerous, maybe because of a political argument that you had with somebody, and you lose your guns before you ever get to stand in front of a judge or in front of a jury. These laws that have passed are horrid. So red flag gun confiscation, that's one of the things that this new law, which just passed, it's spending millions of dollars to encourage states to pass this. Secondly, the new law that Congress passed encourages backdoor gun owner registration. Now, I've got 10 kids, and one of my sons buys a lot of guns. He lives in Florida. He was at an estate sale recently. And this guy was selling a lot of guns, and so my son is asking him about the prices, and so they're talking about it. And then finally, the homeowner kind of shrinks back and he says, you know, I'm not sure I can actually sell you anything. I need to find out first if I have to register like a gun dealer. And, you know, my son and his friend who was with him, I mean, they buy a lot of guns at gun shows, makes a dad's heart proud, let me tell you. And so, you know, they're both thinking, you know, this guy, he is such a noob at this. He has no idea what he's doing. I mean, he doesn't need to get no stinking, you know, gun dealer's license. Well, imagine my son's surprise when I tell him, actually, what that guy was telling you, he has a point now because of the new legislation that passed. And so I started explaining to him what's in Biden's bill, and he was shocked. And let me tell you, this is a son who stays up on the gun news. In fact, Facebook even gave him this little award for whatever it's worth because he's one of the leaders in the country for reposting material from GOA's you know, Twitter and Facebook. So, you know, he gets this award. So let me tell you, he's up on the news. He didn't even realize this was in the bill. So here's the deal. If you want to sell one of your private guns and make a profit on it, then to be technically legal, you have to first get licensed as a gun dealer and sell the gun through a background check even before you sell one gun. Now, this has been the dream of the anti-gun left. It's to register every gun sale in this country. I mean, you may have heard that our organization, Gun Owners of America, filed a Freedom of Information Act request last year. And because of that, we eventually found out that the ATF has nearly 1 billion, that's with a B, gun owners' records. And almost 900 million of them are digitized. This is really scary stuff here. Now, and again, this is what the left wants. They want a record of all the guns that we're purchasing so that ultimately they can take them one by one. And they've already admitted this. Remember California Senator Dianne Feinstein? Back in the 1990s, she appeared on 60 Minutes. And remember what she told Mike Wallace? Some of you who are my age or older, you remember this interview. She said, if I could have gotten 51 votes for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it. There it is, right there. And then remember Beto O'Rourke at the Democrat National Convention? Blank, yeah, of course he used a different word. We're gonna come take your AR-15s and your AK-47s. Again, the left wants to register your guns because that's the necessary first step for what? Gun confiscation. So anyway, I'm explaining all this to my son, all that's in the bill, and he's shocked. And again, this was surprising to him because he's up on gun news, and yet he didn't even know what was in this bill. He didn't realize that there was this backdoor gun registration where the buyer of a private gun, in many cases, is going to need to pass a background check, which of course is going to leave a record. That's what they want. And where the seller needs to become a gun dealer if he's going to sell his gun for a profit. So, see, with all that, without going through all that, you as a private seller, you could become a criminal just by selling one gun. How many of you knew that that was in the bill? I mean, maybe if you've been really, I see some hands going up. I mean, if you were really following the stuff that we've been explaining over the last few months, but you know how easy it is to inadvertently become a criminal by doing that. And yeah, you might get away with it and nobody might know. But ultimately, it's kind of like the old Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry. You feel lucky, or you feel lucky, punk. That's the way he said it. That's the way the Biden administration would say it to you. You feel lucky, punk, selling your one gun for a profit. So again, these are the issues, and there's many more issues we're having at the federal level. Of course, I know that here in Tennessee, you're having the same issues as well. Rhinos, they're leaving a pile of dung everywhere they go, and so we're forced to clean up their mess. But, the way to start fixing the problem is to identify who the rhinos are. And that's why you need an honest voice in Tennessee, and why we're so grateful for John Harris and TFA, because they're willing to call a spade. And they're doing great work in doing that. I'm sure many of you know when deer season is. Well, election day is rhino season, okay? That's when we take out the rhinos. I've been with Gun Owners of America for over 30 years, and one of my huge frustrations is seeing national organizations that will give A ratings to these rhinos so that they can get access into their office. Well, GOA doesn't play those games, and neither does TFA. In fact, TFA actually publishes the candidates' surveys online so that you can see where it is that the candidate stands on. I mean, that's very useful information. And so God bless them for doing that work. They don't play the compromise games when it comes to elections, and they don't play those games when it comes to analyzing legislation either. And that's really important. Already this morning, are we in afternoon yet? You've already heard talk of constitutional carry. Take constitutional carry as an example. TFA has been the leader in exposing the critical problems with permitless carry, constitutional carry, that need to be fixed in this state. And really, if the problems aren't fixed, you could have somebody that's constitutionally carrying one day and find themselves before a jury merely for exercising their Second Amendment protected rights. Let me give you an example of how this might work, and how this might work in Tennessee versus my home state of Virginia, where take another one of my sons, my oldest son. He was out one night helping a friend. They were fixing a car, and one of the neighbor kids comes out. I say kid, he was a young guy, but he was 18 years old, and he had a pistol on his side, and he kind of gets in there with him. He's chatting with him. They're working on the car together. Well, a little bit later, a police officer drives by, and he spots the young man. He notices that with the pistol on his hip, so he stops and he asks the young guy about it. And the guy answered great. He said, hey, I'm 18 years old, which in Virginia, it's legal to openly carry. We have permitless constitutional carry for open carry in Virginia. So he says, I'm 18, it's my right under the law and under the Constitution. And satisfied with that, the officer drove on. That's the way it should work, right? Well, now that's Virginia, where you have a recognized right to openly bear arms without a permit. And to prevent somebody from bearing arms, the government would first have to prove that the government would have the burden to prove that you were guilty and disqualified. In other words, you're innocent until proven guilty, right? That's American law, that's Virginia law, that's the way it's supposed to be. Well, as many of you know, when it comes to concealed carry in Tennessee, it gets a little bit stickier, doesn't it? Your right to carry isn't necessarily 100% completely recognized as a God-given right, as it should be, where there's no questions asked. Why? Because you might have a list of hoops that you have to jump through to exonerate yourself after you get in front of a jury. Let me recreate that example that happened with my oldest son, and let's say it was happening here in Tennessee. So let's say my son is helping a friend here in Tennessee. They're working on their car, and a neighbor comes out. He's not 18 because that would be illegal. He's 21, and he's concealed carrying. But as he leans over the bumper of the car and he's, working on the engine there, his shirt tail comes up, the gun is exposed, and right there that cop is driving by, sees it and stops and engages in the same conversation. The young guy says, well, officer, I'm 21 years old. It's my right under the law and under the Constitution. Same thing that that guy set up in Virginia. Sounds good, right? It's all well and fine. Except that here in Tennessee, if that officer wanted to, he would have the discretion to arrest that young man. Why? Because he doesn't technically have the right to carry under the law. It's not until he gets before the jury that he can then start proving and laying out his defenses, saying, yes, I am of legal age. No, I am not a criminal. Yes, I am carrying a handgun and not a rifle. Yes, I was carrying in a place where I can legally carry. But you see the difference? I mean, you see what's happening there? It's the accused that now has the burden of proving his innocence, of proving all those elements to the jury, because in Tennessee, that's the way it is. On this particular issue, you have to prove your innocence to a jury if an officer were to arrest you on site for carrying a firearm. But see, that's not the way our legal system is supposed to be. And quite frankly, it's not the system that our founding fathers set up. They did not treat our rights like privileges handed out by the government. No. What did they say in the Declaration of Independence? Everyone is endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That means our rights come from God. Our life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And by the way, what does that word unalienable mean? For them to say, that's not a word that we typically use today. To say that our rights are unalienable, it means our rights cannot be revoked, taken away, or diminished in any way. They can't be licensed or permitted, because to do so would treat our rights like privileges rather than God-given rights. To treat them like privileges gets very dangerous, and that's why the Second Amendment, by the way, says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's right. Well, at GOA, we don't support infringements. NFA, the GCA, the Hughes Amendment, they've all got to be repealed. And I'm so grateful in working with TFA, the Tennessee Firearms Association, is of like mind. And so it's been great to work with them. GOA, by the way, was the first national organization to be pushing for constitutional carry. We started pushing for this back in the 1990s, and at the time there was only one state with permitless carry. Does anybody know what that one state was? Vermont. And so back in the 90s, that's how we referred to it. It was Vermont-style carry. Some of you will remember that. I think constitutional carry is a better way to refer to it. Well, when we were pushing constitutional carry at GOA, we were the only national group doing it. And in fact, there were some legislators who were introducing it, and they were getting F ratings from other gun groups for being so bold as to introduce constitutional carry. But they came to us for help. We helped support them. We pushed their bills. And I'm excited to say that now, as you sit here today, almost half the country has constitutional carry. We are making progress. Not only that, there's been a lot of talk about red flag laws. Do you realize there are far more constitutional carry states in this country than there are red flag gun confiscation states? We are making progress. Here in Tennessee, John Harris and TFA are working really hard to get fully loaded constitutional carry. And that's so that good people don't have to be harassed by the legal system simply for exercising their God-given rights. So TFA is on the front lines fighting for you. They're educating legislators in Nashville, and they're looking to fight this fight in the courts. Speaking of legal battles, I can vouch for the fact that TFA has been very helpful to us in federal court. For example, they have partnered with us to fight the bump stock ban that was imposed by the ATF. By the way, when I refer to bump stocks, you realize, unlike that congressman who said that confused bump stocks and stabilizing braces, the two are totally different. A stabilizing brace actually stabilizes the gun and helps you fire it more accurately. It does not turn the gun into a machine gun, as Representative Cicilline so comically said. Anyway, so we're fighting this bump stock ban. We actually won before a 3-judge panel in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Yay, this was very exciting. Sadly, the ATF appealed. They were able to expunge that victory, so now our case is on appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, I'm talking about bump stocks, and some of you may be thinking, yeah, I know what that is. You know, it can kind of speed up the firing. It's kind of a gimmicky type thing. What's the big deal about it? Here's the big deal about bump stocks. By banning them, almost every semi-automatic firearm in your home is on the verge of being outlawed. I'm talking about your AR-15s, your Glocks, your 1911s, your SIGs, your Berettas, all of them. They are on the verge of being banned. Do you realize this? Here's why. The ATF rule on this subject says that a bump stock turns a semi-automatic firearm, pull the trigger once, one bullet, turns that into an automatic weapon. Okay, you got that? Well, has anybody ever bump fired a semi-auto with something other than a bump stock? You can go on YouTube and see people doing it with rubber bands. You can do it with a stick. You can do it with a board. In other words, many common household items around your house can be, even belt loops can be used to bump fire a firearm. So here's the deal. If this rule is allowed to stand and it withstands our challenge, then a far left administration, like the current one, could use this reasoning to ban almost any semi-automatic firearm, claiming that items in your homes can easily convert your semi-autos into automatic weapons, just like a bump stock could. See, that's the scary part of this, and there's already been judges that have been trying to make that case. So this is one of the many reasons why Gun Owners of America is fighting this ban, and thankfully TFA has also been helping us in this. And you know, as I said, this is on appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we have 22 state attorney generals who have put in an amicus brief in support of what we're doing. So we have some real star power backing us. Yeah, this is good stuff. Let me just say what's really exciting about this is that there's some interest on the Supreme Court for a case like this. Justice Gorsuch really is begging for a case like this because this case challenges the notion that an agency can just disregard the law, act in violation of the law, and impose its own regulations that'll send you to jail for breaking the agency law. See, this is really critical stuff that we're dealing with. And so, Lord willing, the Supreme Court will take that case. Anyway, I can't reiterate enough how much gratitude I have for John and TFA, because they've been helping us out in cases like this. They've been, involved at the national level, and I certainly hope that you all will continue supporting them here in the state, because you're not only helping them here in Tennessee, but indirectly at the national level as well. You know, the fact that all of you are here on a Saturday, I mean, it shows that you really care about the Second Amendment. So thank you for being here. Please make sure that you're getting any alerts that TFA puts out. Please make sure you stop by the table before you leave, the Gun Owners of America table. We've got materials there that I think you'll find very helpful, very useful, including a new book that we just published that helps you to answer very succinctly the anti-gunners arguments. It's called Firing Back. In fact, one of my daughters, when I was writing it, she kept saying, "Dad, hurry up and finish this book. I need to read it so I can answer my anti-gun friends." You know, you got to love that as a dad. Like, yes. All right. If you come by the table also, you can meet Stephen Williford. If any of you are familiar with Stephen Williford, he looks like Santa. Stephen, why don't you stand up? He is the barefoot defender, stopped a mass shooting in Texas, a few years back. So come by the table and ask him about his story. So anyway, when you get a chance, go to our website at gunowners.org. Sign up for our free email alerts. That way you can stay in the know with what's happening in Congress and in all the court cases that we're fighting. Again, thank you for standing with GOA and TFA. There's a lot of work to do, so let's work together and let's make a better Tennessee. Thank you all so much. God bless.